All right, thanks, Harley. Good evening and welcome to the July 7th Board of Selectmen meetings. I'll call the meeting to order. Could I get a roll call, please?
Veronica Kell.
Wayne Miller is present. Don Klein is absent. So please note that. Can you join me in the Pledge of Allegiance, please?
We can't hear you.
Of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I apologize. We're going to talk a little louder today, so if people can't hear, please let me know politely. Announce the meeting is being recorded. Chairman's additions and deletions. I don't have any.
Actually, under that, Mr. Chairman, I know you and I spoke about this very issue, the ability for people to be able to hear along at home and whether we're going to be changing that. And as I just informed you, I can say for everybody now that we did get approval from the Commonwealth under a COVID grant to be able to purchase subscriptions for each board and commission for Zoom. So we'll be setting those up the balance of this week and expect that we will have Zoom operable for all boards and commissions, so people will be able to either call in if that's their choice through Zoom, or they'll be able to actually come in from a video perspective and follow along from video.
Perfect, that's good. I mean, without having a conference call phone here, I understand it's difficult to hear, so tonight when we're talking, we'll try to pass it around a little bit so people can hear a little bit better.
Can I just ask, is the meeting also being projected on Channel 9 right now?
Yes, that's according to Hartley.
So people can also go to Channel 9 right now and should be able to see?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
And one additional point regarding Zoom is the planning board actually has been using Zoom, has used it at least once. The rub was that it took an employee using her personal credit card to secure the account. Zoom requires a credit card.
Yeah.
We actually have a selectmen's policy right now that prohibits the town from having a credit card. I'd like your consideration as a revision to the policy to consider the town having a credit card to be kept in the safe in the treasurer collector's office for very limited use. And this would be one example where it could be used, because it's not fair for, in this case, the employee in the planning office to have her personal credit card attached to the Zoom account for the planning board. She's getting reimbursed, it's not costing her, but she shouldn't have to extend herself in that regard. So at the next meeting, you'll be seeing a proposed policy revision that'll come from the treasurer collector's office, the accountant's office. That'll be tightly defined as to where the card will be kept and for what purpose it can be used.
Is that the only form of payment that Zoom can take? Are you certain?
I'm not aware that they take PayPal or anything like that, but it has to be some sort of non-monetary transaction,
And we don't have a municipal PayPal or anything else.
So
either.
let's look at it for the next meeting and we'll
I
talk.
have a Zoom account. I mean, with a credit card, we can use that. Anyway, okay.
Let's move on to appointments. We got in 2.1. So can I get a motion for Lori Schifrin on the MRPC Planning Board?
Before we do that, chairman's additions or deletions?
Sure.
Did we add anything?
No.
Besides Zoom?
No, that's just an update, really.
Can we talk about water? The water IT and the water superintendent? Where does that get talked about? Is that on there already?
It is not, and I did make a note that under town administrator, I was going to offer that, but now is as good a place as any to.
Let's go through these.
Wait, yeah.
Let's go through
if
these
it's on the agenda later, then I'm good. Okay.
So can I get a motion?
I move that we appoint Laurie Schifrin as the MRPC Planning Board representative for a one-year term effective July 1st, 2020 to June 30th, 2021.
And I'll second that. Any discussion? Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. 2.2, appoint Sean Pearson to the zoning board. Can I get a motion on that, please?
I move that we appoint Sean Pearson to the Zoning Board of Appeals for a 4-year term effective July 1st, 2020 to June 30th, 2024.
And I will second that as well. Any
Okay.
questions there?
I think there was an employee response form in the packet, correct?
Correct.
Did I see that? Okay,
And the zoning board approved them, so.
okay, excellent.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. 2-3, appoint Ronald Bernier to the alternate building commissioner, 3-year term. Can I get a motion there, please?
I move that we appoint Roland Bernier as the alternate building commissioner for a 3-year term effective July 1st, 2020 to June 30th, 2023.
And I'll second that. Is that the gentleman that's currently
He is.
filling in for us?
Yes.
Okay, great. So now we'll have a full primary and secondary.
We will. The gentleman you appointed to the full-time position will be in tomorrow with his documentation to process. And he's given his notice, so it was a 2-week notice, so he should be with us in short order.
Okay, awesome. All those in favor?
Aye.
2-4, appoint Donald Masuko to the tree warden.
I move that we appoint Donald Masuko as the tree warden for a 3-year term effective July 1st, 2020 to June 30th, 2023.
And this is our current one, I assume?
Yes.
I second that. Any questions there, Veronica?
No.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. 2-5, appoint the following EMS personnel to these terms. And Jim, for Veronica, we can just say as printed?
As listed in the warrant, we go through the effort of listing them all out, publicly posting them, so you're able to just move them by consent. So just as listed in section 2.5 and then 2.6 when we get to the police.
Okay, when is discussion? Because I do have a question.
After you make the
Once it's
motion.
The
moved and
motion.
seconded,
Okay.
discussions on the floor.
I move that we appoint all those listed under 2.5 to the fire EMS personnel for a 1-year term effective July 1st, 2020 to June 30th, 2021.
And I'll second that. And you have something to...
Yeah, I just wanted to know, when I came in and looked in the box earlier today, there were people who had resigned from per diem positions, and I did not memorize their names, but I wanted to know whether or not the list is up to date, given those resignations in the box.
These are as were submitted by the department head. So to the extent that the resignations that you reference occurred prior to the department head submitting this would be updated. If they've occurred subsequent to the department head submitting this last week, then there may be a duplication. But if an appointment is made and there's a resignation on file, the resignation would stand.
Okay,
Because we're late in doing these. Typically, we do these.
Normally they're in June.
June, right.
Is that it?
That is it?
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. 2-6, appoint the following special police officers. Can I get a motion there, please?
I vote,
Forgive me for interrupting. It's almost impossible to hear you all.
Okay, we'll try to speak louder.
is there a volume control on that?
Thank you.
It doesn't, for us, not them.
Oh, okay.
So just try to talk a little louder, that's all.
The mask doesn't
It
help.
doesn't help, I know.
Okay, I move that we appoint the following special police officers as noted in 2.6 from the Lunenburg Police Department and the Ashby Police Department for a 1-year term effective July 1st, 2020 to June 30th, 2021.
And I'll second that as well. Any questions there?
Hang on, give me 1 second. Make sure I have my...
This is just backup, correct?
Correct. Mutual aid.
No, no questions.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Quickly to page 3. 3.1, review approve 2021 budget. I will give you the phone, since you're gonna...
That would be perfect, yeah, if it reaches.
I do have a question. Can I ask a question now?
Oh, absolutely, yeah. I mean,
Is there someone from finance either on the phone or available to discuss this? Well, because I have a lot of questions.
Yep. And I wanted to start with the fact that, given the nature of the times, we normally would be doing this a couple of months ago. There would have been a process whereby the Finance Committee would have finalized their meetings with departments. They met with the majority of the departments that they would normally have met with, but some of that information is now stale and has been updated. I did have an email communication with the chair of the Finance Committee just today and indicated that while we have a special town meeting and an annual town meeting that require posting, it is only the special town meeting that requires posting 2 weeks in advance, which would be this Friday. The annual town meeting that the budget is contained within isn't required to be posted until at least 7 days before. So it'd be my recommendation, and this goes in concert with something, Veronica, you and I talked about today, without a full board, this would allow us to not vote the budget this evening, have as robust a discussion as you'd like. If there are members of the FinCom on the call, them chiming in, but it would allow a meeting next week to approve the budget in time for it to be posted. We could post the special, presuming it gets voted this evening. There are, I believe, 7 fairly usual and customary articles for the special, but will allow us more time to have questions and answers, and perhaps even a joint meeting with the Finance Committee if they deemed it in their interest to do so sometime between now and next Friday, not this coming, but the one after. So there is no urgency to approve a budget this evening, but there is some urgency in getting it approved prior to a week from this coming Friday. So with that, the general overview of the budget is that this budget is only as good as the next several months. It is fully expected that we will be back at a subsequent town meeting to amend, adjust, make changes to this budget or whatever version of a budget gets passed on the 29th at the annual town meeting. That's driven in large part by the fact that we just don't know all of the underlying data. One of the big parts that we don't know is what the state aid is going to be. That accounts for a considerable portion of our revenue, and we have what was put forth by the governor back in January, pre-COVID, and nothing since. So the earlier iteration of this budget that the Finance Committee had taken votes on used the January governor's budget projections, that's called, strangely, House 1, even though it's the governor's budget. It used the House 1 numbers, which reflected a 2.37% increase over this current year's state aid. The version that's before you tonight reverts back to last year's local aid numbers. It does not account for seeing any increase in local aid. In fact, it's expected that there will be some sort of a cut. We just don't know yet what that will be or if it'll be. So to be conservative, I did speak with our senator and our representative to the general court, and the conservative approach is to use last year's numbers at least for this interim budget that we're looking to pass. And when the dust settles and the governor's number comes out and the House and the Senate each do their respective portion, and the conference committee reconciles their respective pieces, and the governor ultimately signs it, not until then will we know what the actual numbers are, and we'll be back at the table to try to reconcile that against whatever it is that we get accomplished on the 29th. Some might say that we should project the worst now, and if it's not as bad, then just fix it and restore the cuts that were made. I'd encourage people to spend a little bit of time looking through the budget to see that if, for instance, there's to be a 20% cut in local aid, which had been rumored back in April, it hasn't really had a lot of attention paid to it since then, but it was at least at one point rumored. That would be a $250,000 plus or minus dollar cut to the budget. You would not, in this general government budget, putting aside school, in this general government budget, police, fire, highway, administration, debt, benefits, and the like, you would not cut $250,000 out of this budget without impacting services. And by services, I would translate that into positions. So we could project that there's going to be a 20% cut, make those cuts, lay people off, and then find that in 2 or 3 months that it was for nothing because the cut didn't materialize, and then try to correct the disruption in service, the disruption in employment. Layer on top of that, because we are self-funded for unemployment, every person we lay off, we're paying their 62% of their salary for unemployment. So it takes a number of employees to be laid off to equal the savings of one layoff. So there's really no good or upside, positive or upside, to making the cuts in advance on the possibility or the prospect that those cuts in revenue might be coming. So having said that, what you have in front of you is the budget as was worked on by the Finance Committee and the Select Board pre-COVID, with minor modifications. And they are, generally speaking, as was noted in the email I sent to you each last week, you will see that the state aid has been backed down, as I just referenced, to last year's state aid. You will see that the police department has had the position of deputy chief, which is now vacant, changed and converted to a second lieutenant's position. The recommendation of the police chief is for the structure of the command staff to have the chief, 2 lieutenants, a sergeant, and then patrol staff. So the savings for that conversion of the deputy chief to the lieutenant position is accounted for in this new budget. You will also see that health insurance has been adjusted based on an actual enrollment survey. So taking the existing employees that we have as of this 1st July payroll that we've already had, which is taking into consideration the new rates, looking at the actual expense moving forward for the existing staff that we have today, and then adding on top of that the prospect of additional employees for positions that are currently vacant that could be filled during the fiscal year. They might not, but if they're to be filled, we would need to make certain that there was funding sufficient for benefits. Example, the land use coordinator position is currently vacant and funded. If that position were filled and the person taking the job chose to avail themselves to health insurance, that would be a roughly $21,000 expense to the general government budget. If we didn't have that budgeted, we would then be in deficit. So there are 4 positions that are potentially able to be filled, and they show as being accounted for in the health insurance line. One of the additional things that I know will be of note and interest to Selectman Kell is the pavement management. Not to steal your thunder on it, because I'm certain it's taking up a goodly portion of your notes of questions, but
Actually, it's a small portion, but go ahead. I
the,
do have it right here.
okay, well,
CMP.
the pavement management plan that was passed at town meeting a year ago contemplated taking $50,000 from the motor vehicle excise each year until it reached an amount of $250,000.
And starting at 50K last year, an additional 50K each year.
I think that's what I
Yeah.
said, but if I
Okay,
wasn't
go
clear,
ahead.
that's, yep. So we would be scheduled under that proposal to have $100,000 out of excise culled out and earmarked for the pavement management plan.
Plus up to 250K in general fund,
No, in free cash.
free cash,
Yep.
exactly.
Yep. I'm speaking just to the budget
Piece of
right
it.
now, because
Okay.
all of those pieces, the Chapter 90 is extra budget, as
I
is,
understand.
as is the free cash.
Okay.
So at the recommendation of a member of the Finance Committee during the discussion of the warrant last year, an amendment was proposed to this bylaw to say, subject to available funds. And I don't think that she anticipated that we would be experiencing the cutbacks based on COVID that we're now experiencing. But it was, I think, prescient of her to have made that comment and to have that amendment passed on the floor of town meeting. So what you have now is if that $100,000 is put on the table per that bylaw for the pavement management plan, we would be $100,000 further in deficit in this proposed budget than we sit this evening. And I should tell you that when you got this document on Friday, it was roughly $36,000 in deficit, I believe. There have been a couple iterations since then. There are a number of things that have occurred between now and then where we've received additional data, more concrete numbers, and that deficit now is sitting closer to $90,000.
I didn't see that in the budget, in the spreadsheet. Is there a new spreadsheet?
You didn't see what?
I saw the 37, just less than 37K. Where is the 90? I mean, do we not have a current budget available online?
Nothing is online.
Well, in the XLS that you sent us.
This is updated as of about an hour ago with the town accountant. So the one that you received earlier today would still probably say V13 on it. I don't know if you see what you've got there.
Let me see, V13, what
Yep.
I'm looking at is
Yep.
V13.
So this is V14, and this is as recent as about an hour ago with the town accountant, and it shows, under the forecast summary, a deficit of $87,306.
And where did that come from?
A couple of places. The insurance, general insurance, which is the last line item in the general operating budget. We got concrete numbers from our insurance carrier, and there is a roughly $30,000 increase there. We don't yet have our workers' comp audit, which isn't generally done until the fall, and the recommendation is to carry an additional $5,000 for a likely
I can't be heard, thank you.
to carry an extra $5,000 for a likely increase in our workers' comp premium after the audit. That $30,000 is driven largely, if not entirely, by new building. We have the West Townsend Fire Station, which is fully on this year for the first time. We have additional vehicles that were brought on, and
Additional vehicles where?
I don't have the schedule with me, Veronica. I can pull that for you. But we do have a schedule of vehicles that's attached to the policy that shows anything that's a delta between last year's and this year's, so I can get that for you.
Brought on to the this is the insurance policy.
Correct.
Okay.
General liability, public officials liability, workers' compensation.
Okay, so the 30K, an addition, so that's 35K, added to the 37K is 82K, so I'm still looking for 5K?
It's not going to be as simple as that, because some things
Okay.
there were reductions, and other things there were increases. The other changes that you will see are going to be in health insurance. You'll note that the version you have probably is still carrying an $805,000. If you go
I
to
think
the
that's right, it's
you go to
towards the
the
back.
FY21 budget tab and go to probably the fourth to the bottom. It'll take me a second to get there. I believe you should see 805 was the number then.
Do you know what line it is on the XLS?
It's going to be this. I'm going to get there right quick. If you'll look, you'll see line number 836.
Oh, you have a different budget than me. Are you looking at V14? I have total health insurance at $933,000
Correct.
540 on line 761.
Okay, and are you reading column A, the lines, or are you reading the actual?
Column D. Oh, whoa,
The actual
whoa.
Excel lines,
Okay,
so there could be a.
column H, perhaps, 825,072.
No, I'm asking when you say what line you're looking at, are you looking at column A, the spreadsheet, or are you looking at the actual lines in the far left of your document? The line numbers.
I'm looking at column H and the line number,
What do you see?
761 on, so the cell, the
Right.
left-hand cell,
Yep.
761, the column is H.
Okay, and if you look to the left of the left-hand cell, you'll see some numbers, which are the actual underlying numbers of the spreadsheet, not just the line item numbers. We're chasing a ghost there, it's not relevant.
Okay, all right.
You're at the right place.
Bottom line, what's the number?
You should have 9 and change, the number is now 802.
Okay, you're looking at something different from me.
I am, I'm looking at version 14, you're looking at version 13.
So that went
Health
down?
insurance is now 802, correct. As I indicated a moment ago, we did an
Health insurance
actual
went down to 802.
an actual enrollment audit. So it took the number of employees that are actively employed and taking an insurance plan times the rate to come up with an actual number. The actual number of employees that we have that are taking a plan is $700,000 worth of expense to the town. I've also accounted for potentially four additional employees that, as I earlier said, they're vacant positions, and we need to account for the prospect of them taking health insurance.
Correct.
So that's roughly $84,000 additional dollars. So 700 is what we've got for actual on the table. Another 80 gets us to 784. We have a $10,000 consultancy that we pay to manage the claims. That puts us up to 794. I've got it in there at 802.
To cover, okay. So that's a decrease, so,
We then had an additional increase that the town accountant located in the expenditure projection tab, which is the tab 3 tabs further into the document. We receive $15,000 in change from the state for library aid. What the state giveth, the state taketh away. On the very next page, they also charge us an assessment for library aid in an equal amount.
yeah.
To this day, I don't understand why they do it that way, but I had accounted for the revenue piece, but not the expense piece. Lori, the town accountant, when she was combing the spreadsheet this afternoon, flagged that. So that's a $15,000 additional expenditure that
Is
wasn't.
this the cherry sheet library offsets?
Yeah, if you go to expenditure projections.
Yeah, under
And-
state and county assessments.
Correct.
Cherry sheet library offsets, which you have in red, it's highlighted.
Correct.
I don't have any numbers for,
Fiscal 21.
correct?
And that's what Lori flagged. There should be an amount of $16,500 there,
That was
Show me.
what was there
As it-
for 2020.
which I earlier stated, what we're doing is relying on last year's cherry sheet
Okay,
numbers.
so we can
until
fill
know
that
better.
in, and then you say they take it away, so doesn't that make
No,
it a wash?
that is the takeaway right there. I was
Okay.
including in the tab just before, revenue projections, you'll see that there is a state public libraries figure in the revenue side, so that's the next earlier tab, revenue projections. If you look under state aid and cherry sheet, public libraries, you'll see 16,500. I was accounting for the 16,500 in revenue without accounting for the corresponding $16,500.
Okay,
expense.
maybe I have, oh, I see. Fiscal year 2020, 16.5. We have fiscal year 2021 projected 17,237 on this sheet. So you've changed that?
Yes, it's a 16.5, consistent with what I said moments ago about going back and using.
So why isn't it a wash? Because they put it in,
It is a wash. I was accounting for just the revenue. I wasn't, there was a blank cell there, as you see on
I
yours,
understand. Okay, so you were bringing it in, but you were not
taking it back out. Correct.
Okay.
So just in the interest of this, since we're working off of two separate different ones, why don't we get to the questions you had on the one you have printed?
Sure.
Well, I guess my question is, are you done with everything that you were talking about? You were giving us a
Right.
a list
I can
of,
close that part of the discussion with, if we fully fund the education request for North Middlesex Regional School District, which would be an additional $500,000+ for fiscal '21, which would be the fourth year running of a $500,000 increase. If we fully fund that, which my budget does, we're right now 90,000 and change out of balance. That's, I guess,
so we're 90K out of balance. Deficit of 87,306 is what you said. So we'll round up to 90K out of balance as opposed to 37.
correct.
Okay.
Fully funding education.
Now, on the education budget, do we have to do the same thing that Ashby and Pepperell do? In other words,
Well, we may not have a choice.
Correct.
right, exactly.
If
So,
two of the three communities support the assessment, that is the assessment.
so we
Now,
don't know.
We know that Pepperell has. They've already voted to support the assessment. Ashby has not yet.
And when is their town meeting? I thought it was the other day.
I haven't
Well-
received notice from them yet that they've supported
I
it.
thought it was this week.
Yeah, I thought they maybe,
I might be mistaken. I can look.
yeah, that should
So
be it.
presume for the sake of discussion that both of the other two communities are going to pass it. That would mean we are obligated to pay that amount.
And it's accounted for in here?
It is. What it doesn't say is what I'm getting for pushback from some people within the building that are working on this budget, which is, in the past, assessments for education have been made contingent upon an override. Now, I don't support putting an override on the warrant, putting an override on the ballot, but I have an obligation to at least say that that has been the case in the past.
I guess I want to hear from, if Wayne finds out anything right there about Ashby.
Looking. I'll keep looking so you can keep going.
Okay, all right.
So that's kind of the 10,000-foot view, Veronica, is this budget fully accounting for education as currently assessed, and with the adjustments as discussed, we are roughly 90,000 out, and
Okay.
we're now ready for your more specific questions.
Okay, so I'm not doing these in any order, so I'm going to be jumping around a little bit, and there are several.
Which tab are you going to be working from? The budget itself? or-
It's the one you gave me today, so this is the draft 21 budget.
Okay.
So I guess my first question is, in going through this, I saw one and only one increase in pay for staffing.
There should be two.
Oh, yeah, two. It was in hours, though, versus,
Nope, nope, there actually should be two.
there should be two. Did I
But
miss
you
it?
should see, I'm gonna just make certain that it's still accounted for. You should see, yes, in the town accountant's budget, which is
Okay, that was the one, and I saw two increases there. One was in,
an increase of hours for roughly $2,000 for the assistant.
and then another one that was a step increase per
Correct.
contract.
Correct, so from 83,600 to 85,690. And then if you go two budgets down to treasurer collector, you should also see a step increase. And it's not highlighted in red, which may be why it didn't jump out to you as much.
Okay, treasurer collector.
So you'll see a step increase on that line as well.
Okay, yep, I
And
see it.
those are both contractual step increases.
That's what I assumed. Okay.
Beyond that, everybody should be, well, the things that you can see broken out will appear flat. I can tell you, however, that the fire contract, the union contract, does contemplate steps, 2.5%, and those are in the fire budget. You don't see them broken out, you see one lump sum number, so it's a little more difficult to tease out.
Okay. So I guess while we're looking at treasurer collector,
Yes.
the 10K, what is Harper's time and attendance?
This is something that Wayne will love to hear because it's something Wayne has been banging the drum about for a while. Right now, when people submit their payroll, they're submitting a piece of paper that they're filling in boxes and they're signing, and then their supervisor signs saying, on Tuesday I worked 8 hours, on Wednesday I worked 4 hours, and Friday it was a vacation day. Over the course of time, there have been a number of different documents that have been developed by departments that look different, accomplish the same thing, but look different. It's very time consuming, and because you're doing it manually, it's open for error. What the prior board, at Wayne's insistence largely, and Sue's, I believe, if I recall correctly, they wanted to automate this process for payroll, for time and attendance. So what this is purchasing an additional module for our payroll software that will have everybody assigned an electronic tag. You come on at the end of the week, you pull yourself up on the screen, you plug in your numbers, it gets sent to your supervisor confirms, and it goes directly off to the treasurer, and they upload it directly into Harper's.
So that means that everybody has more time because they aren't doing payroll themselves. They aren't filling out a timesheet, collecting signatures, blah, blah, blah.
And they probably do pick up about 6 minutes every 2 weeks, you'd be correct.
Perfect, okay.
It's money well spent, I can tell.
Okay, so that was
The
that
thing-
one.
The thing that is of additional value there is the program is able to be configured in a way that bakes into the background all of the union benefits or personal contract benefits for that respective person. So if you see, for instance, that somebody puts in vacation time, it will know that by contract they have 15 days vacation, and this is a 16th day this fiscal year, and it will flag it and say, that can't be correct.
I do believe that payroll should be automated as much as it can, so.
Okay.
Okay, moving on, under legal, there's a 10K increase from last year. What did we spend last year? Is this
Last
to
year or this
avoid?
year?
Well, I'm looking at FY20, it was FY20 approved was 55.
Correct.
Okay, so this is, okay, I didn't look at the approved.
Yeah,
Okay, so this is a wash.
in fact, we spent more than 55 in fiscal '20. There have been year-end transfers that you'll
Right.
recall. One, I believe, was close to $30,000. So we well overexpended.
And so
what had
where
been
do we
budgeted.
find that in the budget? The anticipated over expenditure?
You wouldn't see it in this budget document. You would see in documentation from the town accountant's office that shows at the end of the year transfers between line items, which doesn't change the bottom line of the budget approved at town meeting, but votes of the select board, concurrent votes of the finance committee to take $100 from account A, where there is an overage at the end of the year, to account B, where there is an underage.
So that is where I find the actual figures. Okay, so in a budget, I want to see the budgeted, approved, actual expenditure, and I can't find that in here. So,
You normally would see that in this document in an effort at shrinking the number of cells available, in large part because of folks like you that had said, there's so much data here that the numbers are so small we can't see it. We're trying to present as comprehensive a picture as we can in a way that we can fit it on paper, sized sufficiently that people can handle it at a town meeting.
but for someone like me who has to approve it and see if
I'm
it's,
about to tell you where you go. You will be receiving, if you've not yet, you've only been here a couple of weeks, so you probably haven't seen a month end yet, but you will be
there's a
receiving.
whole lot I haven't seen yet. But go ahead.
You will be receiving a year-to-date expenditure report.
Okay,
Just because you've not yet seen them doesn't mean you can't see them, or anyone else listening at home can't see them. If they go to the town webpage, go to the town accountants tab, on the left-hand column, there will be something that says year-to-date expenditure reports, and that will show prior years, this year's budgeted, and at any given end of month, the expended to date.
Okay. Okay. Because it's difficult to make because I'm going to make some recommendations here, but it's difficult to know if I haven't seen what actually got spent. Okay, so that's town council. So we're just holding steady on that, and we move around money based on where we are going
We shouldn't be
forward.
spending as much as we do in town council. For a community our size, 55 should be more than enough,
Okay.
but that hasn't been the case.
All right.
And before we change there, I want to make a point because I know some people don't have the same level of appreciation as someone inside may have. We have two kinds of legal counsel. We have town council, which is general like zoning and other bylaws, and labor. That's town council. We then have insurance counsel. So for those that might be hearing this conversation and saying, there are lawsuits, therefore you're spending more than we budgeted for you for legal. That's not the case. All of the expenditures for any lawsuit that is filed is covered under our insurance policy, and the insurance counsel is assigned and paid for by the insurer. So just so people don't conflate the two, that over expenditure for legal counsel is town council.
Okay, so let me just clarify then. Under town council professional legal services, that's both general counsel and employment counsel.
Labor, correct. That's all one firm,
Okay.
correct. And to put a finer point on it, Veronica, the current contract setup with town council provides that general counsel, so everything that we need except litigation and labor is covered by a monthly stipend. So if we talk to Adam or someone in his firm on a general non-litigation or non-labor issue, it's covered. You can talk till you're blue in the face, it's covered. If, however, you pick up the phone and you speak to Kate, who is our labor counsel, the meter is running. And that's above and beyond the stipended amount. And that is where we have, quite candidly, in this last year and the half year prior, run into some of the difficulty, is when the meter is running, we may be under the impression that this is covered by the overall stipend, but it's not.
Okay, so billable hours then. If you send an email and you CC both councils, is the meter running on that?
By God, I hope not. I would expect not.
If I remember the contract correctly, it was anything below 10 minutes is not a billable piece. So once, if you're
Can
having.
I see the contract? Can I get a copy of the contract for
Absolutely.
town council
I
then?
believe it's online, but I'll either find the hard
I
copy
can't
or I'll
find
flag it for you.
contracts online, just know that. I cannot find, there are a lot of contracts that I would like to see, and
Sure.
I can't find them online, but that could be me. Okay, so next question on that same page, under management info. I think I managed to work out all the numbers except why isn't, there's a tech, it looks like, technician, MIS salary technician.
Let me get there.
It's on mine, it's line 116. I don't know on yours. Under requested, there's nothing under recommended, and it doesn't say anything about moving it to the Comcast nonprofit.
Okay, MIS would have nothing to do with Comcast.
Okay.
This budget was a combined, last year it was a combined MIS or IT and cable or PEG access.
Okay.
They both lived in this budget. This year, all of the PEG access stuff, here I'm going to throw you a curve. On the version you see, version 13, you will see that all of the PEG access stuff has been stripped out.
Correct.
Correct? You will also note, if you delve into the revenue projection tab, which I don't suggest you do right now, but just hear me, there was a place last year that showed revenue coming in from the PEG access receipts reserved account. So we have a franchise agreement as the town with Comcast. 5% of everything that gets spent, your regular monthly bill, your pay-per-view, whatever it is, comes to the town quarterly for doing cable access. So we had an amount of money that we were budgeting in the expense budget and a corresponding amount of revenue coming in the revenue budget. Both of those have been stripped, so it's a wash. And that's because moving into fiscal '21, we now have a nonprofit cable access corporation. They are no longer going to be affiliated. I'm about to throw that curve. No longer going to be affiliated with this budget. They're going to be out on their own. The Secretary of State's office has them. They're legally created. There'll be an article on the town meeting warrant to transfer from cable receipts reserved to the nonprofit. And then we do this. Then they're on their own. Every year we'll have an article at town meeting to transfer the funds over to them. They run the show. That was the intent of the parties 5 years ago when the agreement was drafted. We're finally there. The curve is this. One of the changes made just this afternoon at Lori's recommendation, wisely, is we are in July right now. If I strip the budget and have no money in there for PEG access, and we've not yet transferred funds to the PEG Access Corporation until the end of July, Hartley doesn't, not to scare you, Hartley, I know you're listening, Hartley doesn't get paid. We don't have any place in the budget to pay him. So Lori has recommended that July and August, until the dust settles on that corporation, that we fund Hartley's salary and his pro rata share of benefits. So that's another of the adjustments that took place just this afternoon. So you will see in this version I'm sending you a $12,000 public access TV coordinator line.
That might be the missing money, okay? So if that's the case, do we move less to the
Yes.
access when the time comes? So that's an adjustment on the warrant article.
I believe she already picked that up, but yes, that's correct. It's a zero-sum game. There are X dollars in that
Okay, so then
public
that
access
doesn't
account.
affect the 87K.
Oh, it does, because again, that amount of money that's out in that warrant article does not touch this budget. That's an amount of money that is just sitting in receipts reserved that has come in from cable that has not yet been appropriated and spent.
So aren't we taking the 12K or whatever it is to cover the salary for the money
I follow
that
you.
isn't?
Yes, that and the pro rata share of his benefits, correct. So
Okay.
you're right, it is a wash. It comes in revenue and it's showing here as expense, correct.
I think I need to see version 14. Okay.
I
So
thought I'd actually
why
emailed
is
it to
the MIS tech salary requested but not recommended?
because we didn't have an MIS person putting the budget together, so I was requesting it, and I've since reconsidered, because having had Guardian on site now, they, in their business model, they don't want somebody on site that is not their staff that has access to do things to the system. It mirrors the concern they expressed about having an outside vendor having control over a portion of our infrastructure and able to make changes when they ultimately are the one that are responsible for the security of the system. So if we had this position in there and we had it funded and somebody existed here on our payroll and could monkey with things, that creates a security issue for them, and under their contract, they can't have that.
And
So that's why that's not there.
they aren't going to put a person on site here.
They're not. They have,
That was the whole
I
point.
want to see that contract too. I haven't seen that contract. I haven't seen the White Mountain contract. I'd like to see those. So we have a lot of contracts that I should see. Okay.
indeed. I'm gonna check something because I believe,
All right, so that takes care of this page. We'll go to the first page. Or maybe I should go to, well, no, let's go to the first page. All right.
whenever you're ready.
Okay, next thing is, going through this, I noticed that pretty much under every department, there's this line item called travel/mileage in-state. What is that? What is that used for? And I guess that, let
Traveling
me-
in-state usually.
Okay, so my question is, under all these, and they're minimal, you know, $200, $350, $300.
Indeed.
But I'm looking at all of these, and there are many departments with that line item, and I know it's a small amount of money, but given COVID and everything being Zoomed or conference called, or all conferences being online conferences,
Sure.
could we cut those in half? It won't save us a ton of money.
Yeah,
But,
I would
but it
recommend that we not,
could.
for the following reason. Under union contracts, employees that are not provided a vehicle, but that are required to go from point A to point B, we have an obligation under the union contract and from there, even under the IRS, to pay them a mileage rate in order to do that. So it could be,
I understand that.
so it could be something as simple as when the health administrator gets a call, a complaint about some health-related thing at XYZ Street and has to go and do, you know, a visit to that location and make a report and determine whether the health agent from Neshoba gets called in because there's a dumpster that's been let overflow in July for 3 weeks or something. If she's being required to transit point A to point B, she's eligible for, we're obligated to pay that rate. So could we cut $300 to $150 in that budget? Absolutely. Is it advisable? I wouldn't say that it is, because the negligible,
I think it depends on what it's being used for. I mean, where it's been actually used and how much, I mean, that was what prompted me to send you the email asking where are the actual figures? The actual expenditure.
Well, why don't you work with him tomorrow on that, or sometime this week, and then we can decide, because,
Okay, so
obviously
we're
we're gonna be
not
looking-
voting on this tonight, correct?
no, I mean,
Yeah.
to
that's where I
Okay.
started by saying that there's no
Yeah.
need to vote on this tonight, particularly because there's not a full board.
I just want you to ask your big questions, because we're gonna go over this again next week, and so does the finance committee, so.
Okay, so.
And people should understand, normally this,
This is done over like a month and a half, we did
or
last time.
2 or 3, I mean,
Yeah.
we did Saturday meetings and we went through this like last year,
Right,
this
so now
level
we
of.
have like today. And
No,
that's
we
it.
have next week. We have,
And understanding that you're at a disadvantage, Veronica, because you.
Oh, absolutely.
You know, the paint's not dry yet on, you know, your name tag. So, I mean,
Yeah, there
No.
isn't even a name.
normally
But in
this
any
wouldn't be
event-
happening.
All right, so I guess my big thing is, I respect the police chief's willing to, ability to figure out what staff he wants, but we've had an empty deputy chief position for at least 6 months now. I think that we should not, we should just leave that out, no additional lieutenant. That gives us 78K. So my thought before I knew that we were 90K in the hole as opposed to 37 was that 78K could be distributed to just keep it out, cover the 37K that we're in the hole first, so subtract that out, which gives us, another, 40K? Fund the grant writer. I think that's an important position. Don't fund the HR piece of it, but fund the grant writer at 25K.
We've tried that for the better part of a year. And at 25K, we got people that have wonderful experience working in retail or working in places entirely unrelated to grantsmanship. So
But there might be people in town hall that could be trained to become that, and their salary could be increased somewhat. I just think the 25K grant writer is important, especially going forward.
And I can tell you, Veronica, that of the people in the organization right now that potentially could be trained up for that position, they are either, in order for that to happen, they'd have to be sub 20 hours now in order to take on another 20, right?
So maybe, fund the 25K, maybe it winds up that you don't pay that much. You make a part-time employee a full-time employee.
But then you're not just funding 20,000 or 25 for the grant, you've now picked up another 21 for
For
insurance.
insurance, right, exactly.
So, I mean.
But
the-
it's something to
The
consider.
pebble in the pond theory here, the
Well,
ripples.
And I don't think we're there yet about positions, because the other thing to consider here with the police part of it is he's just taking a sergeant's position and making it a lieutenant's, if I understand it correctly. So it's not subtracting any salary, it's just a slight pay increase.
It's
No,
actually,
that's not
it's actually,
exactly.
well, it's actually both, when you get right down to it. It used to be that there were 3 sergeants. Right now, he has 1 funded sergeant.
It's
he had-
4, actually.
He had a,
What, he has 4?
It was
funded
4, and they
sergeants?
took one of the empty sergeants.
since I've been around,
off.
it's been funded at 3 at one point. But right now, there's 1 funded sergeant, 1 funded lieutenant, 1 funded deputy chief, and 1 funded chief. So there are, so you got sergeant, lieutenant, deputy chief, chief. You have 4 command staff. What he's saying is that second one, the deputy chief, make it a lieutenant. So that could either be you're reducing the deputy chief down to a lieutenant, or you're increasing a sergeant up to a lieutenant. It's you can say it either way. It's either an increase because you're going from a sergeant up, or it's a decrease because you're going from a deputy chief down. But it's still going to be 4 at a lesser expense. And
But I'm looking at it as, we haven't been paying a deputy chief since the current chief became the interim. So we have been, the police department has been functioning without a deputy chief.
we presume optimally, and I would suggest to you that that's not the case.
And I would suggest you reach out to Jay to talk to him about it.
I will, but I'm just looking at dollars, and I'm saying it's a position that, and we only have, what, 9 more months?
And that's fine. If it's something you want them to take a look at, then you just ask them to do that and come up with it. But, between us, the finance committee over the next week, we're gonna have to find suggestions on cuts. And
Well, I think it's a way to, you don't change anything, you keep that budget solid. For now, I mean, you keep the attrition. When you are in a budget crisis and you have attrition,
I'd rather look-
typically you don't fill the position until you're out of it. I'm not saying forever, I'm saying for the time being. Don't fund that position.
Well, and that goes back to the original point that this is not gonna be the last budget for this year.
And I couldn't agree with you more,
Well, I
Veronica.
agree, and so if we have the fund, leave it empty for now. You gain 78K in that position. Leave it empty for now, and if the funds come in that we can fund
And
it,
I would suggest that,
then put it in, as opposed to putting it in and being in the hole.
and I would suggest we do that with the open positions as well, because I can't hire somebody for, in case we might lay them off in 3 months. That may be the case.
And-
Well, I agree. I mean, we have it.
I would start with, as temporary budget, this is, because I'm calling this temporary, is we look at those open positions, not fund them now. Same with the, like, to your point, I think Jay can wait another 3 months to make that change. But I'll let him discuss that with you. And then take that money, and that's where we can save money over the next several months and balance the budget, rather than letting people go.
Right, and a great example, and I agree completely. I think the management philosophy that underpins what you're saying is spot on. If you're in trouble, you don't fill positions, right?
Exactly.
I'm living through that in my real life right now.
I would say that if we are able to close the gap, even as interim as this budget is, by doing that with vacant positions, I would say that police position should be left harmless if we can do it. And I can tell you, like, for instance, the land use coordinator, 45 grand, 21 grand being carried for insurance, there's 66 grand right there in that one position. If we then look at the clerical position in the police chief's office, there's another roughly 50 we could pick up right there. That gets us out of this deficit. It leaves that command position there. I've got to defer to the judgment of the police chief on something as critical as police
I would
operations.
agree with that. Typically, I would agree with that, but this is not a typical time. The other thing is with the land use position, I mean, that's one that's funded in here and funded for benefits.
Correct.
And so if that's the case, maybe we hold that in there and we adjust the job description so that, I mean, we are also missing a administrator, a person to do the minutes and,
Conservation.
you know, in conservation.
It's funded.
So
but-
maybe we look at that part and roll the grant person into that and do adjustments there as far as job description goes for that position. And do some rolling there.
That was already, just, if you weren't aware, that part-time position for conservation was also a part-time position in highway.
Correct.
Creating
It's under two.
one full-time benefited position. So right now, both of those are vacant. So
Right, so maybe highway gets a part-time person and conservation gets a land use coordinator who's also a grant writer, and then where do the minutes come from? I don't know, but it's something that needs thought about, and we only have, what, 7 days or something to
Well,
figure this out?
for a
5?
temporary budget, Veronica, this is, I started, I was trying to speak in bold and underlined and italics. This is not a real budget, because we don't have the real data, but we have to have a budget. So we're going to do the best we can to put a budget together that approximates what we have had in the past, so people
I
aren't
agree.
losing
I
service.
understand.
But if between now and then, the choice is having 2 part-time positions combined, either highway and conservation, or conservation and new grant writer, and creating a $20,000 benefit load, versus having the lieutenant funded, my God, there's no question in my mind that I will defer to the public safety side of the house and say that we're gonna have to keep those 2 part-time positions separate, if funded at all.
I don't disagree with you, but I think that going forward, I think we have to look to grants.
No, I completely agree. It's, again, if we just have it, not being a full-time position, it's hard to get somebody to bite on that. There's other ways to fund it we've talked about, and we can have that discussion moving forward too. I have no problem with that. But for this budget tonight, since the finance committee hasn't chimed in, and Jim obviously has a target to cut now, I think we need to let them both look at this and make suggestions on it, and then next week we can decide with the full board, because I do not want to vote on this tonight without Don's input.
When is he back?
I hope enough,
In time for next meeting.
Yeah.
Next Tuesday,
Next Tuesday.
so,
prior to that, but in time for.
I mean, there's a lot of work to be done on this, so, I mean,
So maybe it's FinCom that I need to talk to, as opposed to here.
Yeah,
I mean, is that what you're saying?
what I'd like to see next week is a couple of plans to make a balanced budget. Whether it be not funding those positions, taking your suggestions, and the finance committee's suggestions, because there's a lot of money we need to kind of try to move around.
Well, 90K.
Doesn't sound like much, but it is.
But it can be moved. I mean, you can. I was looking for 37K in here. I wasn't looking for 90K. The PMP, nothing from free cash, I'm taking it.
I'm sorry, where are you now?
I've moved to the pavement management plan. Nothing from excise tax. Nothing from free cash.
So we're outside of the budget now. You're asking about the payment management plan bylaw that would contemplate
Right.
Chapter 90, excise, and free cash. Right now, this budget, which is what's on the table in front of us,
Nothing
Nothing
from
is there.
excise. Free cash
Chapter
and
90,
Chapter 90
is there, and free cash is subject to town meeting.
TBD, okay. All right. What's the reserve fund in FinCom for?
During the course of the year, if something unforeseen comes up,
Okay,
the cruiser blows a motor, something that wasn't budgeted, couldn't have been foreseen, the FinCom sits lord over that amount of money for reserve fund transfers to be made.
okay. Next question, under facilities, part-time cleaner. Has cleaning increased due to COVID? And are there funds available via the CARES Act?
Cleaning is being increased, but not in this budget. So one of the kind of curveball things about the CARES Act is if you have an expense that is budgeted, you cannot then reach into the CARES Act to have the CARES Act pay for it. So for instance, if this budget contemplated increasing cleaning by two additional part-time people, we'd have to fund it within this budget. Instead, what we got approved for, I spoke at 2 meetings ago now, 2 part-time cleaning positions, 2 19-hour non-benefited positions.
That are funded
They're
under
funded
the Act.
under the CARES Act, so they don't hit this budget, but they
Okay.
exist. Having said that, they've been advertised and we've had not a single look at them. So if anyone is listening at home and has an interest or knows of someone that might have an interest, we have 2 19-hour cleaner positions that are available in the town.
Okay. All right, so the rest of my questions, I guess I'll hold for the Finance Committee. I mean, I guess I
Yeah.
thought they would have already have looked at this or been here tonight
Well,
or some such thing.
Like he said, the plan back in February, when we
Right.
could still meet, was to set up a series of working sessions like we did last year.
Right.
Not, hopefully not as extensive as we had planned.
Which we did. I mean, pre-COVID,
And-
we had
and
a
prior-
couple meetings.
And, I mean, the luxury you have right now is you had never seen this before your election.
Right.
The budget'd be done. You'd be walking into town meeting looking
Oh,
at the
right,
budget for
if
the
it
first
were
time.
a normal year.
So this is kind of weird. You're probably going to be the only selectman that's ever looked or commented on 3 budgets. So, and
Well, at least I can comment
But I understand you have-
now
I understand-
instead of from the floor.
I understand you have, if you
Take
only
what
knew
you
what
can
Jim
get,
whispered
Wayne.
beneath me that night. But you're getting thrown a tremendous amount of data here in a short period of time
Yes,
that I know you have a lot of questions for. I would suggest working with Jim and the Finance Committee over the next 7 days. I know it's not a lot, but we got to try to do as much as we can and do the questions there. So
okay, all right.
if you don't mind.
Oh,
I'm not
I
forcing
don't
you to
mind.
do. Okay.
And
I'm moving on.
to quote the great philosopher Mike Tyson, everybody has a plan until they're punched in the face.
My favorite quote of all time.
And we clearly, back in March, got punched in the face because what has been the usual and customary process since long before I got here even, wasn't available to us.
Yeah. Okay,
Let's put the phone back in the middle. Work. So we're not voting on this at all. We're tabling this until a future date, correct?
Correctamundo.
Okay.
when is the Finance Committee meeting? Do we know?
I do not know. I did communicate with the chair of the Finance Committee today. She had a couple of questions I was able to
Is
offer.
that Lynn Pinkerton?
It is.
And can I contact her?
Oh, absolutely. You have free
Okay.
access to anybody and everybody.
Okay.
So 3.2, this goes back to your previous comment on we only have to vote on one of these tonight,
Correct.
correct?
Right. So if
That's
we,
just the special?
correct. The special town meeting warrant, and I have copies on the printer, if I can take leave for a moment to go get them, because they've been cleaned up. Veronica found a typo in one of them.
In 2 of them.
Oh, two.
Did you see my next? I sent you 2 emails. You might not have seen it if you were working with the treasurer.
I did see them, actually. One of them was a 17 instead of a 7, and I had 2 6s, I believe.
Are you gonna read these, or?
Oh, you have 2 6s and you also had 2 3s. Oh my goodness, here's another one.
I throw those in there just to give you something to find. They're little Easter eggs I grant you.
Are you gonna read the whole thing, or?
There's 6 articles. I'll speak to them very, very loudly, but
Do you have new
if we
copies
get-
for us,
yes,
or are
I'm
they?
actually just putting them together, pulling them off the
Okey-doke.
copier. This is,
And
the
this is
special?
different from what I have, correct?
I corrected the spelling or the numbering that you
Let's just worry about the special tonight then.
Yeah, that's all we need to do. So looking at the special, what we have, Article 1
is a usual and customary prior year financial articles. It would require 9/10 vote. And it reads, to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate, borrow, or transfer from available funds in the treasury the sum of blank for the purpose of paying prior fiscal year bills or take any other action in relation thereto. Submitted by, traditionally, the Board of Selectmen. Description, this article is required to pay any bills from a prior fiscal year. Example, I expect that there is going to be a Comcast bill that is going to be a prior year bill that wasn't able to be paid during this fiscal year because it crossed over the beginning of last fiscal year. It was a bill that came in, it was incurred in May, didn't come in until the end of July. So the year is already closed, so it can't be paid because it was from a prior year. So those are the types of things that you see here. Article 2, current year financial articles. Article 2 is to see if the town will vote to transfer from free cash the sum of $126,331 for the purpose of offsetting snow and ice deficits. That should say fiscal 20. Snow and ice deficits under the provisions of Mass General Law 44, Section 31D. So as is the case in each special town meeting held before the annual, whatever the delta is between what we budgeted for snow and ice and what actually Mother Nature hit us with gets taken up in this article. Article 3, to see if the town will vote to close out the building inspectional revolving fund, the sum of $56,575.69. Several years ago, when the high school was just starting up, there was a negotiated matter between the then seated select board and the inspectional services folks to set aside in a revolving account a fund sufficient for them to get paid for the additional workload that was required for their inspections of the high school. That project is closed out. This is the balance remaining in that fund. So that will close out to free cash in the next year.
And this is not reflected, it's free cash, it's not reflected in the budget.
It is not reflected in the budget, nor is it currently free cash. Right now, it is an account on the general ledger for inspectional services with that amount in it. This
Okay.
would seek to close that out. Once the account is closed, the money drifts down to the bottom line at the end of the year and
Okay.
reappears in the following year's free cash. Next would be Article 4, to see if the town will vote to transfer from water enterprise retained earnings the sum of $2,000 for a match to the Mass Municipal Vulnerability Planning Assistance Action Grant to assess climate impacts on the town wells. Submitted by the water commissioners, and this will allow the water department to assist the town in meeting the grant match requirement for the MVP grant if awarded. So
So
your
my
thing.
question is, should Article 4 and 5 be reversed? Should we look at Article 5 first and then do Article 4, because Article 4 is part of the match should the grant be awarded? If the town doesn't vote positively on Article 5, do we actually need Article 4? Do you see what I'm saying?
I do, and I see it the opposite way. I see that if Article 4 passes, that number in Article 5 of $34,249 is a legitimate number. My understanding from talking to Beth is if Article 4 doesn't pass, we will need to have Article 5 say 36.
Got it, okay,
So they should be sequenced in that way.
all right.
And then Article 5, we skipped ahead quickly there, but Article 5 is to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate and/or transfer and appropriate and/or borrow and appropriate a sum of $132,939.52 for climate resilient water supply assessment contingent upon an award of the grant to reimburse 75% of the cost. The town will apply for a State of Massachusetts Executive Office of Energy and Environmental Affairs, EOEEA, Municipal Vulnerability Preparedness, MVP, Action Grant to reimburse 75% of this appropriation. The town will provide an in-kind match in the amount of $34,249.24, or 25% of the total cost. Submitted by, I don't know. It came from the planning office, but I don't know who is submitting this, so that's why it just says,
Oh, it's the Board of Selectmen.
that's why it says suggested. But I can't say that unless you all say
So
you're
we
submitting.
need to vote on this, I guess.
Okay, so I'm taking suggested out. It is Board of Selectmen.
Yep.
And for people following at home, this is basically a grant that we have to appropriate the full amount in advance of getting the grant, and then we'll reimburse the 75%. The $34,249, or 25% of the total, is not money that's being asked of the town. It's actually in kind. So
Correct.
staff time. There's a menu of,
NRWA has offered hours.
Yep.
The Land Trust has offered hours.
and
There-
in-house staff. There's
In-house
there's a
staff.
menu of hourly rates,
Right.
time functions, so this isn't cash as much as clearly as it says in kind.
So the 2K from the Water Department in Article 4 is the only cash part of that match.
Correct.
So,
And then lastly, Article 6, PEG access closeout. This document currently says need language to transfer PEG access funds to the newly formed Cable Access Corporation. Adam has that. He's working on the language, so that would be in hand in time for this document to be posted. The amount that is currently in the cable access account is $472,370.72. To Veronica's earlier point, we'll need to check to make certain that the July and
Subtract that.
August pro rata share of a staff person and benefit load is accounted for in this. So this will either be that number, or it'll be some $16,000 or $18,000 less. Now, just as a footnote, there is currently underway, has been underway for far too long, the extension of the cable system down to Vinton Pond Road, that end of Bayberry, and around to Sauna Road. There's a cost for that. We've received the money already from Comcast. It is contained within that number. Originally, it was contemplated to be roughly $130,000 that it was going to cost the town. The new numbers we have are closer to $75,000. The point I want to make is this isn't $472,000 that is unencumbered. There is a bill that's going to need to be paid out of this for that cable plant extension. And the cable commissioners are aware of that.
Get it done.
I agree.
I've had communication, you've probably seen emails on this point, but those following along at home, we have a new Comcast rep who comes to us from another area in Comcast organization where he had been very successful in pushing projects like this through. Within the first week of him being here, he was able to get us not only the new number, but he was able to get Unitil to do their make-ready work. What's make-ready work? That is the work they need to do to make the poles ready to put cable. What does that mean? You basically have a telephone pole, the top wires are power, the next ones are communication, and the lowest ones are going to be your data and your cable. They need by code to have a certain number of feet between them and a certain number of feet between the ground and the bottom one. The poles weren't tall enough, so it could have required new poles to be installed, but if you go down that area of town now, you'll see that what Unitil did is they put brackets on the top of the poles that extended them about 18 inches, and they were able to restring their wires onto the brackets, which then gives the sufficient number of feet for the clearances or all the others. The next step is Verizon moving theirs up that 18 inches. As of last week, that was being scheduled. The Comcast piece, they've got it all drawn and ready to go. 45 days for them to complete theirs once Verizon is done. I'm in weekly communication with the guy from Comcast. He's been great. So
Good.
that is the special town meeting warrant.
All right, can I get a motion to approve and sign the warrant?
It wouldn't be signed, it'd be signed out of session because I
Out of
still need to have Adam's last language for that Article 6 on
Okay.
cable access.
Okay, I move that we accept and sign out of session
Yep.
the warrant for the special town meeting to be held on July 25th, 2020.
I'll second that. All those in favor?
Before, can I ask a question?
Sure.
In addition to the wording for Article 6, will Adam be reviewing, or someone there be reviewing all of this?
They normally will. Given the fact that these are standard, they're just replicated from last year with the exception of the MVP, which they've already reviewed. So
They did review the MVP?
they did.
Are you certain?
I know that they got a copy of it as soon as I got it 2 weeks ago, I believe, from Beth, and it was sent right out to them for their review.
Could you confirm that with Beth?
Yeah, I'll confirm it with Adam. because
Okay,
he would be the
confirm
one.
it with Adam, that would be fine. That the language on Article 5 is,
Yep.
is valid, because I don't want anything kicked out on that based on language.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. 3.3, discuss accept the funds received in the amount of $39,280 from the Mass Health Ambulance Certified Public Expenditure to be placed in the ambulance account reserved appropriation for future EMS expenses. Can I get a motion, please?
Yes, but can I ask a question first? When are we reviewing the annual? Next Tuesday
Yeah, we can talk about that in the,
at the end?
yeah.
Okay. I move that we accept the funds received in the amount of $39,280 from the Mass Health Ambulance Certified Public Expenditure Program to be placed in the ambulance account reserved for appropriation for future EMS expenses.
Now, I'll second that. Any other question? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. 3.4, review, approve, sign municipal relief transfers for fiscal year 20. Can I get a motion, please?
I move that we approve and sign municipal relief transfers for FY '20. Is that 2 years back? A year back?
Nope, that's the year that just finished last week.
Okay, that's FY '20. All right.
I second that. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Excellent.
Work session, Board of Selectmen announcements, updates, reports. I do not have any this week. Veronica, I see you have some.
Oh, I have.
Actually, this would be where I was contemplating speaking, so Veronica, I think these are yours as well, the White Mountain contract and the water superintendent, so.
Go
Okay.
ahead on that.
Excellent. On White Mountain, at your meeting a week ago, where you had joint attendance with a member of the Water Commission, the direction I came away with from that meeting was that I should the next day have a conference call with town council and Rebecca McEnroe, the consulting superintendent for the water department, and get this matter resolved. That the Water Commission wanted to move forward and get the contract finalized with White Mountain to be their IT vendor. I did speak with Adam first thing in the morning. He let me know his availability. I reached out to Rebecca McEnroe. She wasn't able to have the conversation with me based on the fact that her work is to be limited to engineering, but she did get information for me from Terry, who was the office assistant until very recently. And at the end of that communication back and forth, we're left with the same position of the parties that existed at the end of May and was codified in an email the first week of June, which was, you can't have the town's standard form contract and the vendor's boilerplate contract both exist and be executed if there are conflicting terms. Council took the opinion that the policy of the select board required the form contract of the town to be utilized, where the form contract had a 7-day notice provision where you, without cause, could terminate the contract. The vendor said that's not fair because we pay generally 30 days ahead for certain parts of this contract, and we could conceivably have extended ourselves and be cut out without being able to be compensated. So the board in a prior contract for IT with Guardian had agreed to extend that to 45 days. So that was extended out to 45 days and made known to the folks at White Mountain. Additionally, in the White Mountain form that they wanted to have executed, there were indemnification provisions that would have provided a greater degree of protection to the vendor than to the town, that were directly in conflict with the terms of the town's standard form contract as recommended by council. Again, back in May, codified in writing in June, council said, we can make edits to the contract document, the town document, this way that will give you some protection on specific things you think you need your language for. But we can't leave that very broad language. That wasn't responded to at all, not only not favorably, but not at all by the vendor. until this week. I reached out, I spoke with you, Veronica, I believe on Wednesday, or perhaps Thursday, about what the status was. I informed you what it was. I reached out to the vendor directly and said, this is the email from the first week of June. The position of council remains. Have you taken a position on this? I did get an email back yesterday afternoon indicating that they are okay with council's expressed revisions. I advised back that I'll have that cleaned up and ready for signature. So if it pleases the board, a vote to approve the town's form contract as amended by council for the IT services contract between White Mountain and the town of Townsend for services at the water department to be signed out of session would be in order. We can get it done earlier than waiting until next week.
Okay, can I get a motion, please?
I move that we sign the White Mountain IT contract for the water department with the changes that council approved
Out of session.
out of session.
Perfect.
I'll second that. Does that change the IT piece? Because if we sign that, we're locked into them, correct?
With a 45-day notice, you would be locked into it. So what I presume you're going at there is we have this concurrent effort to have Guardian do an assessment.
Yes.
My expectation is that Guardian, and this is pursuant to your discussion a week ago, Guardian will have that completed by the close of business tomorrow. I don't expect this document will be ready for signature before then. If it comes back that Guardian says, you know what, this is great, we'll carve it off, it can be cut this way, and they can have their own infrastructure and their own vendor, as Commissioner Melanson said was recommended by EPA, then that's great. If they come back and say, for the following reasons, we think that's a bad idea, I would report back to you immediately. That would be prior to you signing anything, and if it was necessary to have a meeting to have that discussion, then so be it. But right now, just to keep the ball moving down the road, this keeps the pieces moving.
Do we amend the previous motion then?
Well, let me say that I think that Guardian can do what they're doing within the building and look at it. Why would, I think that White Mountain takes water, Guardian takes the building, and it would be a firewall issue, and that between the two of them,
Well,
they should be able to
Sure.
work that out.
White Mountain's proposal has them, White Mountain, installing their preferred brand, Sophos firewall. So right now, there is currently a Sonic Wall firewall that the town proper, not the water enterprise, had purchased. It would be disconnected, swapped out with White Mountain's.
Theirs, correct.
No harm, no foul. We would have, in essence, we would have an extra firewall available for deployment someplace else if it was necessary. So there shouldn't be an issue with that. The bigger issue I think Wayne was going after is, does it make sense? Are there any problems that will be created by having two vendors that we're not currently anticipating? Now, we heard vague discussion yesterday, which I think was the extent of all of our understanding, not yesterday, last week, that currently there's a shared drive on the town server
For
into
billing
which,
purposes.
I'm sorry?
My understanding was that was for assessing, I guess, assessment purposes.
Tax,
They need data.
tax accountant and assessors. So if there is a commitment of the bills that Brenda generates as the office manager in water, she puts it into the shared drive where everybody has access and each of the other departments can do the thing they need to do with it. That works well for everybody. Is there another way to do that if not through the server? Is there an offsite, I don't know. And that's one of the
There
things.
are. There is.
Yeah, there are.
Yeah, and that'll be one of the things that would need to be understood before any final decision is made.
So are fire and police tied to town hall?
They're not, they have their own servers.
And that works perfectly fine, right?
They have their own
Do they use
servers.
Guardian? Who's their IT people?
They do not, they have somebody that specializes in public safety whose name is escaping me right now.
Okay, so how is this different? I mean, how is it different between,
It's not. Traditionally, they've been part of the town hall.
okay, so
Proper.
it should be good. So my motion stands.
Okay, and I'll live with that, and we'll look at the assessment. If we change our mind, we'll,
The one thing that is different is right now, the water department doesn't have their own server. Right now, the water department is a department that is tied into the town's server. If we sever and have two vendors, they will then need to have their own server.
Well, hopefully, someone has looked at that.
That's
Anyway,
what I was just speaking
okay,
to.
all right.
Keeping both of them moving concurrently. That's
Okay.
what I'm saying.
all right. Can I get a vote then, please? All those in favor?
Do I need to redo the motion, or are we good?
Negative, you're good.
Nope, I'm good with it.
All right.
Aye. Okay.
Excellent. And then the superintendent. Did you have a specific question, Veronica, about that, or I can just give a general
I guess
update?
I want to know, has the query been completed? Do we have a result from that one way or the other?
It-
I know that he had a physical maybe tomorrow,
It is tomorrow, correct.
and I saw another email about 12:15 for his license, the license check.
Um,
And I assume that is all being handled, and everything is rolling along positively, so perhaps you can update us.
Everything is rolling along swimmingly. And I see no impediment absent a failed physical from him beginning his employment post haste.
Perfect.
On the issue of Corey, because this was a subject of some discussion
Yeah.
in emails over the weekend. It may be that there was a time when general, non-public safety employment Corey checks were done through the police department. I say maybe because I don't have any evidence of that, but I've heard people say that that might have been the case back as far back as when Chief May was here, early 2000. I can tell you that at least since 2012, when the Corey laws were changed and there was a separate carve-out created that is known as I-Corey, which is kind of Corey light, if you will. It's a very narrow view, non-law enforcement depth view that is intended for municipalities, nonprofits, schools and volunteers and chaperones and things like that. It does not look at a board of probation, which a full Corey through a law enforcement agency would look at. It was created specifically for doing background checks for administrative review for non-law enforcement purposes. Since at least 2012, that is how Corey checks have been done in the town of Townsend, and I would posit in towns throughout the Commonwealth. I didn't want to respond to an email last night to that effect until I had done a little more research today. That's consistent with records in the town hall, and it's also consistent with opinion of council. I did reach out and speak with both Adam and Kate. Adam as general counsel and Kate because there's a labor component to it, and both have confirmed that police departments should not be doing background checks for municipal employment positions. That's what I-Corey is for. Now, could there be a policy crafted specifically for the town by the select board, agreed with by the police department that says they can do that? The law doesn't prohibit it. But in Townsend, such a policy doesn't exist. And in fact, what does exist are two specific policies related to Corey, one that is police and one that is selectmen. Police says in 8 or 12 pages, Corey is to be used for law enforcement purposes. Full stop. It then gives law enforcement descriptions and purposes. The selectmen policy says that Corey is to be handled through the town administrator's offices, through the executive assistant. And that is a policy that was updated as recently as 2018. That is how things have been handled since, the best that I can see in the records, 2001. So the current executive assistant, Carolyn Smart, is I-Corey certified and is the Corey officer for all of our non-public safety hires. Prior to her, the incumbent in that seat was Adam Smart. He is the Corey officer for all of our non-public safety hires. Prior to her, the incumbent in that seat was Carolyn Smart. He is the Corey officer for all of our non-public safety hires. Prior to her, the incumbent in that seat was Adam Smart. He is the Corey officer for all of our non-public safety hires. Prior to that person, the incumbent in that seat was, and prior to that person, Carolyn was also then, for 15 years further back, the incumbent in that seat, and was also the I Corey. She was Corey then. As of 12, it turned to I, but she was the Corey certified person.
15 years or 15 years ago?
15 prior is my understanding. It goes back to 2001 when Chief May, according to everything I can find in the town hall, said he shouldn't be doing it. It should be something that's done administratively. If you look at a document put together by General Counsel Agapi Koularis for CGIS, which is available online, I can forward you a copy and make it easier. It also says that there should be a limited number of people who have access to Corey, who are certified to access Corey. There should be one department and not multiple departments, because you need consistency from a legal perspective so people's rights are being best protected. And that is consistent with the policy the Board of Selectmen adopted, again, as recently as 18. So that's a long way of saying,
I guess, go ahead.
a long way of saying, for non-police, public safety, Corys, for employment purposes, they're handled out of this office pursuant to policy, which is in conformance with the police department's policy, both of which comply with the law, most specifically as amended in 2012.
Okay, so here's the thing. If you are trying to get a critical position filled and an I-Corey needs to be done, then either people need to be aware of the vacation schedule of the town employee, whomever that may be, whose position it is to run the Corey, so that they know to get it in beforehand, so that it gets submitted prior to the vacation time period. Or we need to say that we will allow someone to start without having the results of a Corey,
Can't do
which
it.
is also an issue as well.
You can't
So
do it.
the problem was that there's no backup. And so maybe we want to look at the policy to see who the backup is. Why should you hold up for 2 weeks someone's employment if you knew that the person, the bottleneck, and there is a serious bottleneck. If
I
you
disagree-
knew that
I
the
disagree with nearly
bottleneck
everything
is
you're
going to
saying.
be shut, then you need to make sure that people know that, so that the timing doesn't conflict. That's all. It's that there is no backup. And if who does one person's job when another person is on vacation? And when it's a Corey that only one single person can do, and they're going to be gone for over 2 weeks because of a holiday period falling in that time, which is perfectly fine. It's just that either the water department needed to know that that vacation was happening, so they could get their paperwork from their chosen guy who had only been selected. I don't know the time period, but in any event, it was bottleneck. That's all I'm saying.
Allow a brief response. In an organization the size of the town of Townsend, there should not be redundancy, because the number of times we do an I-Corey, I can count on one hand in a year. We don't need to create another door to liability. Now, in this specific instance, we had a 9-month period where the position was vacant. And then it became a critical issue to get done yesterday once a decision was made. We had no advance notice that they were imminently preparing to put a name forward. So what did we do? We didn't say, this person is out for 2 weeks that does the Corey, so too bad, so sad, you're gonna have to wait. No, we did what we do in a small organization, which I know you disagree with.
I
We
do.
reached out and said, hey, Carolyn, we got this issue. They want to move it as quickly as possible. Would you mind logging on and doing this? She said, no problem. She did it. So there has been no delay whatsoever.
I guess my feeling is if you have an employee who's on vacation,
But I think, to both of your points, it was expectations. When you approve somebody to hire, it just doesn't happen that next day. So there's got to be a time period where, because he hasn't even had his physical yet. So even if his Corey took 2 weeks to do, he doesn't have everything he needs to do to get done. So I think it's just reassessing people's expectations when we do hire somebody. It's not, you're starting tomorrow. In my job, I had to wait a month and a half to start.
But you need to know whether you can,
And
whether
that's,
you are
and that's,
actually being hired.
and that's Jim's responsibility, is to make sure that happened, and he did, so.
But I did it in a fashion that Veronica disagrees with.
I just think that if people are on
Well,
vacation.
if you wanna take up a policy thing, we can bring it up in a future meeting.
Okay. Gonna be looking at a lot of policies here, Wayne.
So those are the two that I had, and I think, Veronica, you next had some stuff, right, on the agenda?
Well, I do, but before we do, I have one thing that might be under you. What about the quorum vote for changing the quorum for town meeting, or are we gonna stay with 75 for July 25th, which I'm fine with?
As of the night that you had the conversation, we were already within the deadline for what would have been required to do.
So we have a 75-person quorum
We
for the
do.
25th?
We
Okay.
do.
All right, so that is not on today's agenda. So we're gonna fit, has anybody taken the area of that field or whatever to make sure that we can socially distance the number of people that we need to physically distance to get everybody into that spot? I mean,
With the expectation that not every person will be coming from a household unto themselves, but we may have a husband and a wife, or a husband and wife and an adult child, which, as I close my
Okay.
eyes and I see the audience, I know that we have groupings of families. Families can be together inside one
Okay.
of those circles, so it's expected that we can do that.
okay, all right,
Unless they're not getting along that day and they want their own circle.
well, they can make that decision, I suppose. All right, so on the agenda, the public face of Town Hall. These are my things, and I guess I kind of want to know, before I even get to that, is for the agenda, how do I put things on the agenda? And this is probably a question for you.
You either reach
Wayne.
out to me and say you want something on the agenda, or you reach out to Jim and him and I discuss whether it's valid or warrant.
And that's, so I can send you an email that's not a
You can
public,
You can ask, the two things you can send that I will not reply to, well, one I will reply to. One is meeting schedule, so we're allowed to discuss that as a serial meeting, I guess, if the right
Okay.
term. Or if you send me agenda items that you'd like on there, I will not respond to you, whether it's going to be on there or not. That's up to you to work with Jim on doing that, so that
The cleaner way to do that would be,
just send them to you.
yeah, the policy says, your policy as a board says that the agenda will be set by the chair in consultation with the TA. So if you as a member, non-chair, want something on the agenda, send it to me, and then when the chair consults with me,
Yep.
there's no argument that somebody has serially communicated on a topic.
That's
Even
fine.
if he's not responding to it, somebody could still argue that the two of you both had eyeballs on, XYZ topic.
So
So
keep
he's
it clean.
consulting with me,
Keep it clean that way.
but you have an
Go
absolute
back
right per
over that.
policy. You have an absolute right per policy to put something on the agenda. That's in your policy.
okay. And so I send you an email.
Just send it to him.
Just send it to him.
Him and I review the agenda every week before we have a meeting, so.
You understand why not sending it to Wayne is a better practice, because somebody could say that if there's an issue going on in town and it's controversial, just make it crystal clear, and you say, hey, Wayne, here's an email and I want to talk about that controversial thing. You two have communicated serially just by that email.
But if I leave out the word controversial and
No.
just say I want on the,
Just keep it clean and.
No, you have a right by policy to put it on. Just email me, say, this is what I want on. Then when Wayne and I go over, or whoever the chair is, and I go over it, what'd you get from other members that they want on? Here's the stuff.
all right, so that answers that question. Similarly, what's the process for a townsperson to have an item added to the Board of Selectmen agenda?
Chairs,
Same thing. They
ultimately,
send it to
ultimately
you.
the chair's discretion. They can send it to the chair directly because there's no open meeting law violation, because they're not a seated member of the board. But
Okay.
ultimately, you have a right as a member to have something on, but by policy, anything else that's coming from anybody else is the discretion of the then seated chair.
And you can respond to that person and tell them whether or not it will be on the
Because
agenda.
they're not a part of an open meeting.
So, all right, thank you. Okay, so, 4.1.1, public face of town hall. What I mean by that, and some of it has been fixed, it's that when someone calls town hall, that they get a response or a person. If someone's out on vacation, that there be an away message up so that people know, so that there's backup. I understand that it's a small place. However, I guess, is there a defined backup order for backup path for people who are out?
I'm not aware.
Well, give me an example. For instance, if somebody has an accounting question, there's nobody that's going to be able to answer that for them in backup, because I wouldn't
Okay.
be, nor would anyone else.
And
If there's a
so-
general question like, hey, I'm calling the town selectman's office to find out when town meeting is, and they get the, I'm unavailable, I'm on vacation, to your point, there should be a, for general information, please contact the
Yeah,
town administrator.
because
So,
there wasn't last week.
I understand.
And I will tell you that when I call the town clerk's office, someone always answers, and they always get back to you. At least that's been my experience, just in general over the years. If I call the Board of Selectmen's office, it's rare.
What's rare?
That if I don't get a person immediately, it's a black hole,
Are you saying you leave message and don't get response?
correct?
I'd love if you have examples of that, because,
No, that's a personnel matter, that's not a,
yeah,
Right,
Face of
okay,
town hall
all
matter.
right, so.
that's not a systems issue. That's a,
Examples. I'm not gonna, this will be going forward.
Sure.
I don't tend to go backwards. Okay, so, and the other thing is.
but you are going backwards. By saying that, you're going backwards. Just to be clear.
No, I'm not. I'm saying that,
You are.
that is what has happened in the past.
Which is backwards.
I'm not gonna go looking for examples of things in the past. All I'm saying is
Yeah.
that going forward, I would like to see, I'm out of the office, if you need immediate attention, call so-and-so.
Agreed.
If I send an email, I get I'm out of the office until, if in fact that is the case. If it's one day, that's different. That's not if someone's out sick, someone's out sick. You shouldn't have to put up an away message, I'm out sick today, call this person, but.
Understood and agreed. My only point on that, Veronica, is to say I'm not going backwards, but to have made the statement that it has happened without anything to back it up is going backwards. And that bothers me when something is stated as an issue.
I wouldn't be saying this otherwise.
Well,
I mean,
I don't know that.
wouldn't be
I don't know that.
making this statement otherwise. All right, so the other part of that is, where do you find agendas? Where do you find minutes? The town website, and this goes kind of to 4.1.3 as well. So the town website is really hard to navigate. It's very hard to find things. And oftentimes when you say, oh, I found it, you get page not found. Things like that. That's mostly on minutes where that's the case. But agendas now, today, the agenda is where you would expect to, on the Selectmen's page on the right-hand side, the agenda is there. It hasn't been there for a while.
well, to the point, and we can just skip down to 4.1.3, that
Yeah.
I have no problem with that. Work with Jim on making that happen.
Yeah, I want the Civics Plus contract. I don't know who updates the pages in Town Hall now. I doubt that it's Civics Plus who takes the agendas and the minutes
Oh,
and
no,
puts them in
no.
place.
Each board or department is responsible for their
There's
own
gotta
page.
be some
Yep.
thing going on, so I'll be happy to look at that. the word liaison is probably the wrong, I mean,
No,
I don't know.
if it's a
not
project
town
you want to take on, have at it.
Okay, all right.
Webmaster?
Pardon me? Oh,
Web-
no, I'm not
webmaster?
gonna be the webmaster. I just wanna look at I'm gonna be the systems analyst for getting the website up to where it should be on a regular basis. So, I mean, and starting with that, I'm gonna wanna know who's on what committee. Because I know that there's at least one person on the agricultural committee who doesn't live in town, anymore. So it's things like that. If you look under the Board of Registrars for the elections, there's no one listed. But I'm sure we have a Board of Registrar for elections. So, and I have no idea whose responsibility it is for what page, but I will do that. So I'm gonna wanna know who's on what committees, when their terms are up, and the path. And where do I start with that? The Civics Plus contract?
No, I don't think you're gonna find anything in the Civics Plus contract. I think the first meeting would be with the town clerk's office, because they are the custodians of the most up-to-date committee members. So they can print you what what each committee should look like.
Okay.
At that point, we'll get you credentials to log on, to be able to poke around. If you or any of the people that are calling you on these issues, Veronica, see a page that comes up with a dead link, email it, whether it's coordinated through you as whatever this role is, or whether it's just generally to the department that the link is broken for. And we
Okay.
can
And
peck away at it.
where is there the procedure written? Is that in the Personnel Policies and Procedures Manual? Where is the procedure for updating the website?
I don't believe you'll see any procedure for updating the website. I think there was a training done when the website was brought in with each
And that was
department.
done by Civics Plus?
Civics Plus would have, when the,
And can they come back in and do another training if need be? I mean, because it's possible that people have left who are the responsible parties, and that could just be the issue, is that the person who was trained is no longer here. Do you see what I'm saying?
I do see that, and I think that Civics Plus would probably be very willing to come out for a nominal fee to do such a training, and we can get that taken care of.
And then we have to look at that budget, huh? Anyway, okay, all right, so I'll get started with the town clerk's office. There is no procedure in place. So who do I talk to about this?
You're talking to them, yourselves, the board. You would set a policy. You are the chief policy setting body for the town. If there's a hole someplace in policy that you think needs to be filled, that'd be something to say, hey, I want to bring this issue up, and then you guys would look at me and say, can you go draft a policy for our consideration at the next meeting? And we would march along happily down that path.
Okay. All right, so I will become the website systems analyst.
Next.
I guess 4.1.2, going back to that, confirming the meeting schedule. Oh, wait, before I move, public face of town hall. Are we requiring people who are on vacation to put up away messages on email at least?
This goes back to the IT issues that Brad was talking about just last week from Guardian. We are still functioning on, let me say it in the affirmative, we are not yet functioning on Office 365. So they have been loath to make any changes to the email server that we have been working off of for far too long. So they are in the process of doing the conversion now. Those things will become as easily done as you know them to be probably in your life with Office 365, which is not the case now. Now it's a manual effort to actually create these messages.
So it's not part of settings or something like that? They can't go into settings on the email? And
I'm advised no, that was actually done manually when you brought the point up last week.
okay,
So that, going forward, once Office 365 is fully implemented, which we're in the process of doing right now, that then becomes
Easily
a matter of
done.
course.
Okay, and what's the target date for Office 365?
They had a 30-day window to do the complete conversion, and that started last week.
So, first week in August, roughly.
All things considered, yeah.
Okay.
So meeting schedule, we'll set a meeting for next week for Tuesday,
Yeah.
Target Tuesday. We won't be able to confirm with Don before then, but we'll get it on an agenda. All I want to see on there is the budget and invite the Finance Committee to do a joint meeting
What about the warrant?
and the warrant. Those are the only two things I want to see on there for that. And then we'll, if necessary, we'll meet the third traditional, the first and third Tuesdays of the month are,
Okay.
okay.
Yep, I thought pretty much we had confirmed that last week,
Yep.
other than when there's a special. Okay, what's my next thing? 4.1.4. I'm not interested in amending the liaison policy. So that wasn't the idea.
So just take this off.
Well, no, what I would like to see is an agenda item regularly once liaisons are
And,
assigned.
and just bear in mind that you may have it on there, but there may not, I don't read, I don't liaison with all the places I have to do for every 2 weeks. Sometimes I don't at all unless there's an issue.
But don't they send you their agendas and their minutes?
Some do, some don't.
Isn't it required?
No. The liaison position's just there as a resource for them. If they need help, great. If not,
I thought there was a liaison policy.
there is, and I'd ask you to review that with Jim. I don't remember it off the top of my head. I didn't look.
And the reason I wrote it this way, Veronica, just if you wanted
I'm
on
not
the,
looking for written reports.
if you wanted on the agenda a standing item, that would require the policy to be amended, because right now the policy, the Selectmen's operating policies says that the agenda is set by the items on the standard agenda are set by the chair. And I just wanted to make the point that the agenda can't just be changed without having the policy changed to make it possible.
Okay,
We went through this with the issue with adding public input. We needed to change the policy to actually add public input to the agendas. So that's the only reason I wrote it that way.
Okay, I will review the liaison policy, but I thought when I read it was that if you are assigned as a liaison to a committee or a commission or a board, that the requirement is just that as the liaison, so the planning board would know I'm the liaison. They would send me the agenda, they would send me minutes. I would review them, and if there was anything that needed to come to the attention of the Board of Selectmen, then I would report it.
Mhm.
And it would be that I thought it said that there was a regular, it should be regularly part of the agenda of the Board of Selectmen. I can review the policy, I might have read into it, but that's what I remembered, and that's why I put that there.
Yeah.
Because I think it would be good for the Board of Selectmen to be aware that the planning board was doing the MVP planning grant, or that,
And just to use that specific example of that, because I think I was the planning board, if I'm needed or involved or need Board of Selectmen approval, Beth reaches out to me.
Yeah, that's good.
Same with the police chief, same with the fire chief, same with all the other public safety pieces I do. So it does happen. I do bring it up. It's just not on the agenda. I've been doing it under my updates, the reports.
okay, so we can all do it under that?
Yeah.
Under the Board of Selectmen announcement, updates, and reports, each of us can report there?
Yeah.
Because that might be good enough.
I think it is good enough.
So, okay, all right, so I read the policy, I didn't see that there, so that was, that, all right. So that would just be to have reports. I'll reread the policy. Okay, and then discussion regarding public comment period. We have a public comment period at the beginning.
And I'm gonna ask to table this until the three of us are together.
I'm good with that.
Okay. I don't wanna have this discussion without Don being here, because he was,
Okay, and so next week on the agenda, we're doing just the budget and the.
yeah, so
and
this can be
the-
on the regular scheduled meeting.
So-
It's not an immediate need to change it right now, I don't think.
Okay, so after town meeting.
Yeah.
Okay.
And to that point, I've been pretty liberal about my comments, the public comments during the 6 months I've been doing this.
I agree with that.
So, no,
My thought, and we're not, is that you can comment at the beginning, but something might happen during the meeting.
I understand, but I.
And so it's
and-
nice to have that comment at the end as well.
And again, I think I've been pretty liberal with,
Yeah, I'm not saying that you haven't, I just
No.
think that
I-
it might be nice to have it formalized, but we'll talk after town meeting.
okay. All right, Jim, 4.2 reopening plan.
Just very briefly, the reopening plan that the board adopted, I'll speak louder. The reopening plan that the board adopted contemplated having all of the signage and cleaning and PPE supplies, as well as personnel to perform the functions in place. We've yet to receive the last group of signage, which would be the directional signs to show when you come in, the main entrance from the parking lot, your one-way traffic flow puts you back out into the parking lot on the door that is closer to the municipal garage. They're expected last week. I expect that they'll be in this week. We keep being told that they've been delivered. They've been sent. Additionally, there's a back order on a fogger that is a required piece of the plan to be done morning and evening throughout the building to disinfect with a fogger. That, again, we were told is finally in stock and is set to ship. We don't yet have it. The two cleaning positions that I spoke of earlier, we have funding from the state. We've advertised. We've not received a single bite. So I'll state it again in case somebody didn't hear earlier tonight in the meeting. If you yourself or know someone who might be interested, we have two 19-hour cleaning positions. The hours can be made flexible to fit your needs and ours together, and it's imperative that we get these positions able to be filled, because as it is now, we will have other people pinch hitting in a capacity that's not generally theirs. I'll be doing things that wouldn't normally be mine, as would others in town, because we need to do the work that needs to be done.
So we're close, but we're not there.
But the big piece is done, which when you walk in, you see, and Veronica, I saw your smiling face on the video camera today. You can come up to the building, you'll see the silver box with the departmental buttons, and you push the button to who you want to see, and it rings in their office. They see your face, and they get to interact with you and buzz you in, and so that is up and operable. We do have the main signage about masks and social distancing, so we're very, very close, but we do need these couple critical pieces yet before we can have full public access. We are doing kind of a modified, where Kathy, for instance, will be meeting. I know, Veronica, you've seen them out at the picnic table a couple times. We've, Eric, who,
On the front porch.
right, Eric, who had, Veronica and I took up residence on the front porch, like, a Country Time lemonade commercial last week for a couple hours. So we're doing what we can to accommodate people as they need, but we can't have full-on open access yet until we have those pieces in place.
Okay.
Should be shortly.
Good. All right, 4.3, review sign bills payable. Can I get a motion for that, please?
I move that we review and sign the bills payable warrant
Out of session.
out of session.
Yeah. I'll second that. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Can I get a motion to adjourn, please?
I move we adjourn at 8:05 PM.
I'll second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Good night, everybody. Thank you.